Okay, so we are going to get started this morning, and I was going through the PowerPoints this morning and realized that I think I'll be able to get through all of the, all three of the topics. So I am going to find the one I need to share. Okay, sorry, I have to go back and just find the one I want to share. Oh, of course. I love it when it does this stuff on me. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Now, are you seeing the, sorry, I'm just pulling up so I know who's all on and etc. Okay. Are you guys seeing the asset approach to positive youth development?
Yes, and with this, like the smaller screen.
Yep.
Yes, I can see it too.
Awesome, thank you guys. Okay, now you can see it big. Okay, so this is, I don't know how many of you have ever heard of the Search Institute out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you have not, it is a great resource when we're looking at just general youth development information. It is a great site and a great resource for us. So, but I want to talk, they have what they call the asset approach. So what is the asset approach? It is really looking at, took it too far. Okay, so it's really looking at some building blocks of development for young people. And it is what young people need are those building blocks, and what it shows, and I apologize, my screen is being really jumpy this morning. I don't know why, but or my camera's being jumpy, but those building blocks are what young people need in order to thrive and be successful. And so that's what happens when they do have these building blocks. So some of you may remember the term thrive. You know, this spring when we did the trainings, the staff trainings, I introduced what we call the 4-H Thrive model. And this is one piece, you know, it's a piece. All the things I'm going to talk about today are a really good background for understanding how the Thrive model is going to work. So what this is called, so the asset approach is using 40 developmental assets. The one thing that they do say in this is the more assets that a young person has, the more likely they are to be successful as an adult. So you can look here, you know, the framework of this really identifies crucial relationships, experiences, some opportunities, and some personal qualities that they show that young people need to grow into being healthy, caring, and responsible. So they've done surveys. It's really designed for 6th through 12th graders, and they've done surveys across the United States. I don't know, I'm sure we have communities in Nevada that do continue to do the asset survey. I should look into that to see. A lot of times our schools are doing that, but what they show is youth show the more assets that they experience, the more likely they are to make positive choices. And what they have found is that on average, a young person has or experiences about 18 of the 40 assets. So what are those assets? There's 20 external assets and there's 20 internal assets. So as you look at the external assets, they are around the areas of support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, and constructive use of time. So that's what I want to talk about that right now. So we talk about the external, the support. So things like family support. So this is where your family life provides high levels of love and support, or positive family communication, where, you know, the young person and his or her parents or guardians communicate positively, and that young person is willing to seek advice from those and counsel from those adults and from those parents. Look at other adult relationships. So this is that young people receive support from 3 or more non-parental parents. And so you'll hear me talk a lot about, you know, young people need those relationships from at least 3 additional adults in their lives that are not immediate family. And so this is really where, within the 4-H program, you know, our staff and our volunteers fall into. But they also have a caring environment. You know, the young person experiences caring neighbors. And, you know, there's also a caring school climate where, you know, the school is a safe place for them to be. And then their parents are involved in their school, you know, helping their child to be successful and helping them succeed in school. So as youth development professionals, when we think about this, can you think of ways that you can use this approach in your work? You know, think about just the support area. And we're going to talk about this with each one of the different areas. But what are some ways within the support area that you, as a youth development professional, can help with to help give the young people these experiences? And you can unmute your mic or you can type in the chat box. I've got both, you know, I've got the chat box up.
Well, I guess you could think of it as these, you know, the support and empowerment are the basic building blocks for what's needed for any young adult to have the framework to even be successful. So if you just look at those individual things, if you're missing one or a few of these, it's going to be really difficult for them to kind of overcome that. And just to keep in mind what barriers the youth might have that they need to overcome to kind of help them be successful, I guess.
Okay, good. Yeah. I think that's a really good observation about this. Other thoughts?
Carrie, this is Nora. I have a question about the approach in general. So about 10 years ago, I actually attended one of the week-long institute trainings and kind of did some in-depth looking at the research that this was based on. And basically, everything was correlational. So at the time, there wasn't anything that showed that if you did these things that it would improve the youth's outcomes. It was more like, yes, youth who were doing well had these things. So it was more, again, not causal. Has things changed? Has there been more research to show that if you actually improve these things or change these things, it will lead to those outcomes?
And that's part of where the Thrive model comes in to, you know, that we're actually trying to prove with the Thrive model as well, and that they have proven. The more, you know, if they have these, and which means, you know, they have to experience them somewhere. So if we can help make these changes, then yes, it would, you know, it would give them the skills that they need. Now, granted, not every child, you know, a child could have all 40 of, you know, experience all 40 of these assets and still not be successful, as, you know, but they have shown the more they have, you know, the more successful they will be.
But it's not looking at one point in time. Like, because it's the way I remember it was more like you could also show that every kid who had like I don't know who ate bread for breakfast, ate bread as a child, like 100% of people who were in prison had eaten bread as children or something like that. So that was more correlational. So you wouldn't necessarily take away bread. So does this is what research, or is it on every single one of the developmental assets? There's research that shows that if you do that, it does increase the likelihood of the success. You see what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I need to look at that and see how they've done those relationships.
okay, thanks.
Yeah. Did anybody else have any ideas? One that I have is something that I actually did see personally in this area. One, they say, is as youth development professionals, just smile at young kids. I mean, that sounds really funny, but they get they pass adults all the time that don't smile at them, don't even acknowledge that they exist. And that's really important. One of the things that I saw happen was, this was not early in my career, kind of mid-career, but we had an after-school program at a site, and I had a gentleman running that program. I had an AmeriCorps Vista worker with me, working with me, and he was gone 1 week, so I went in and worked in that out. He taught the lesson around the after school program that day. And I walked in, and wanted, got to know the kids, had all the kids introduce themselves, and really worked on trying to learn their names. I think and those kids, I mean, it was just amazing to me, those young people. When we were all done with that training that day, they came up and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this was the best session we've had. You knew our names. How'd you know our names?" And I don't even remember the gentleman's name that I had working for me. Sometimes I try to block it out a little bit, but they were like, Mr. So-and-so. He just looks at us and goes, "Hey, you," and doesn't even, never did try to know the names of those kids. And I'll tell you, that program went from about 30 or 40 young people that had signed up originally, because we had done it the year before very successfully, but a new person coming in and running it, to, I think in the end, after 10 weeks, we maybe had 5 kids showing up, because they didn't feel that support, and they didn't feel that sense, that sense of belonging, or that sense, that somebody cared about them. And so again, that's just one example. Try to get to know kids, our young person's names. Now, I know it's difficult, but it's good, if you can. Any other thoughts? I'm going to move to empowerment. So you look at community value.
I'm sorry, Carrie.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. When will Nevada, I know we're talking about this, but when will Nevada fully initiate Thrive?
When it's initiated at the national level, which I'm still, yeah.
Okay, we don't have a timeline on that?
No.
Okay.
They're putting together some working groups in this month, so we should know, like, they're working on the implementation process.
So it might be the start of the 4-H year this year or next year, or who knows?
I would say it's going to be within the next year.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I know they're working on implementation strategies with volunteers as well, because my comment was, this is very difficult to teach to volunteers. So they're trying to get that straightened out too. So when you look at empowerment, so things like they know that the community values youth. So they perceive that adults in the community really think that they are of value. The youth are seen as resources and they're given useful roles within their community, that they provide, that they serve their community. One of the things that they say is a young person should serve their community 1 hour or more per week. And so, again, these things are where 4-H, this one to me too is a great avenue. 4-H is one that can provide these, and that our young person feels safe at home, school, and in their neighborhood. That one's a little more tricky, but we can at least provide them a safe place where they feel safe in their, when they're at 4-H. So they at least have one place. So what are some things that we can do as youth development professionals in the area of empowerment?
Carrie, this is Nora. I think this one is really, really important. I know there is a lot of research in different areas on this about, youth contributing to their community, being volunteering, tutoring younger kids, cleaning up parks. I mean, there's just so many. I feel like the opportunities are endless there in terms of them volunteering, contributing, feeling like they're contributing. It's they're being given a sense of responsibility. They're learning to be responsible. There's just I probably answered too soon. I just really love this one. I feel like the kids. I didn't. But there's just so many things. I feel like because in them they're engaged. They can be engaged. So it could be whatever they're interested in. There's usually something that they can do to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And really it helps yourself. And that's one thing I've seen too, is a lot of times, even like I was on the board of the Girl Scouts, and they would do all these things where they would take take youth to other countries to help. What the research shows is those youth think they're helping these other countries and the kids there, and I mean they are to some extent, but really that helps them so much more. Like the skills that they learn, how it puts them ahead in life, and what they're able to be exposed to and helping others, it really helps them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. This is the one I think we can spend time on, as 4-H, as youth development professionals. One of the things I think about with this one is inviting our young people to share their talents and their gifts with others. So, I think about when we're planning day camps, or we're planning, even our teen counselors at 4-H camp, find out what they're good at, and maybe they can lead a session in that area. As professionals, for us, we can help give them some of those, we can work with them to make sure that they are successful at that teaching moment, or just sharing. Maybe it's that we have somebody that's really good at the guitar, playing an instrument. Maybe they play, I think about, okay, so 4-H, I'm just in 4-H camp mode, as most of the rest of you are in 4-H camp mode too, but maybe they play at the campfire one night. But they're sharing that gift and that talent, and they're seen as valued for that talent. So that's one example. Another one I have is when you notice that a kid is doing, when a young person is doing something right, make sure they know that. Make sure you're telling them that. They get so much negative feedback all the time that we have to give them positive feedback, and I think that's really important. We have, I've dealt with some very, very challenging young people, and where, like, in a weekend time frame, or a 2-day camp, I saw more negative things happen with this young person than positive things happen with this young person. But we found those 1 or 2 positive things and let them know about that. an example. So we had this young man, and I probably, some of you have heard my story about this young man that was probably 7 or 8. He was not very old, and we were at 4-H camp, and he was, number one, dropped off by his social worker. He lived with his grandma in the town that his dad was serving his sentence in prison in. And grandma had moved there to be near her son, and mom was also in jail. And this young man was, I mean, he was more than a challenge. But one day, one of the days, one of the kids in his cabin tripped on a rock and fell down, and he stopped and helped him up. That was probably one of the only positive things. I mean, honestly, the rest of the time he was harassing all the other kids. And but we did make a point to let him know, hey, you know what, we really appreciated you being we appreciated you stopping to help. And it was that one positive. And then you did see a little bit of a turn on this young man. And, so it was that, just letting them know that they're doing a good job.
Carrie, if I could add to that, I mean, right now, our camp is in session right now. And we had a young man apply to be a teen counselor who is currently in group foster care, and he has a lot of issues. And prior to accepting him as a teen counselor, we had lots of conversations with foster grandparent, social worker, the group home social worker and stuff, and the camp director. And we made that collective decision that this experience will be, albeit challenging at times, will be incredibly enriching for everyone involved. All the other teen counselors, this young man, as well as, the adult chaperones, because of recognizing that as we're building on our equity, access, and opportunity, we need to embrace young people from all chapters of their life.
Exactly. And he probably sees, that's giving him that feeling that you guys valued his contribution that he could give. Liz, did you have one too?
Oh, I was going to say something that I've found to be pretty vitally important as well, which is more on our end as the adults, is kind of, which I think it can be sometimes a little more challenging, is to also change our vocabulary to, we're not dealing with them, we're working with them and making them feel like they're not something that they're not something negative that needs to be dealt with. They're somebody that we see something in and are working with them to move in that positive direction, and just, not wanting to use the vocabulary of dealing with them. It's working with them. And that's something that I try to use in my vocabulary with my teens a lot.
I think that's really good. I just wrote that one down as an example because I like that.
It's hard because, I don't know, it's not even necessarily that you think that you're just dealing with them. It's just something that I think it's hard to change that vocabulary. But once you do, you just kind of start seeing it differently. That it's a challenge, but you never want them to feel like we have to deal with them. It's that there's something that we see in them positively that we're working with them to get better at that.
Great. Did somebody else have a thought?
This is Nora again. I read an article the other day that was it was aimed at teachers, and it was called The Toxicity of Complaining About Students. So it just reminded me of what she said. Like, yeah, if that's all you focus on, then yeah. And the other thought that I had was, not just providing these opportunities for youth to contribute, but I see how we train the counselors here. You have to give them the skills to be successful at that. So like when you took the youth up to the Capitol Days, you trained them before they went. You didn't just have them show up that day and, on the way there said, like, do this or do that. I mean, you actually prepared, that sets them up for success, because it's not enough to provide these opportunities if they need to be successful at that contribution. So I
Yep.
think that training
And
them to
as youth development professionals, that's one thing that we can do is give them the skills. So great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, guys. So the next one is talking about boundaries and expectations. And so, we always think about teens don't necessarily like boundaries, but the research is showing that young people do want boundaries, and they're gonna work, as long as they know those boundaries ahead of time. So things like family boundaries. So, this would be that, the family has clear rules and consequences and monitors the young person's whereabouts. That's something that, as I'm embarking in teenager and high school age child, I'm learning that we're having to set a lot stricter boundaries. And I think that, as a family, and that's something that's hard for us as youth development professionals, but, that's something, if you are dealing with a child at home, that's something to remember too. And school boundaries, making sure that the school provides clear rules and consequences. I think most of our schools do. And then our neighborhood, this is the one, neighbors take responsibility for monitoring a young person's behavior. And I know as somebody that lives in a community, I think we can all, we all live somewhere that we don't feel like we can, monitor other children's behavior, but darn it, I'm still going to do it, in fact, before we moved here, we had, I was pretty good friends with a lot of Cody's Cody's friends' parents. And I would look at him and go, hey, if he's over at your house, or if you see him out and about and he's being a little turd, feel free to take care of it. Talk to him about it. Let me know. But, I feel like that's really important. And I do that even now, with his friends. I'm like, if he's being a little turd, you guys take care of it. And I'll, if I see some of the kids, like when his friends are over at our house, I don't have a problem going, no, not acceptable at our house. This is how we behave here. And I nobody stops coming over because of that. And so I think it's really important. Or if you see things happening out in your neighborhood, you need to let people know. I know as a young person, I had of course, in my neighborhood, we were out in the country, but most of my neighborhood was family. But they knew, I knew that I couldn't misbehave because everybody was watching. So, adult role models. So, parents and our other adults are positive and show positive and responsible behavior. That positive peer influence, that their friends are modeling responsible behavior. As a parent myself, or I even see it with other, with some of our young people within the 4-H program, when you can see that their friends are not being that positive influence, then you just talk to them about, so what kind of decisions are you guys making? Are these the right decisions, do you think? What can we do to improve these decisions? But and then high expectations. If we set the bar low, they're gonna go, they're gonna hit that bar at that level. If we set up the bar high, then they're probably gonna work towards it, and you have to encourage them along the way. But I truly don't believe in setting the bar low for any young person. I think we have to challenge them and get them a little bit out of their comfort zone, and having those expectations for them. So what do you guys think are some, again, what are some ways as 4-H professionals and youth development professionals we can help with those boundaries and expectations?
Well, this is Sarah. I think any time that when we adopt best practices for all of our interactions, whether it's a club program, an after school program, a spin program, or whatever it may be, if we're all well-versed in best practices and understand what it means to address boundaries, we can, our role specifically as adult role models and positive peer influencers, and outline expectations. Maybe we don't call it high expectations, but we call it expectations of engagement or something. Then, and we continue to role model that. Then that's how we ensure the sustainability even after we're gone.
Yeah.
I think along the lines of like what Sarah was saying, is that if we're going to set the expectations, it's very important to stick to them and hold them to those expectations. And it's something that I had to recently handle a situation where the expectations were not met. I was able to specifically use code of conduct along with my expectations, and that was a very difficult situation, to say the least, and was not taken well, unfortunately. But the way I looked at it is, with that group of youth, I do expect a lot out of them as leaders, and if I'm saying that, I need to practice that as well, and to hold them accountable when they're not meeting those expectations. And the way that went, they didn't understand why their behavior was not to those expectations. So I guess if we're going to do it, we need to be ready to practice that and to hold them accountable when they're not meeting them.
Very much so. Very much so. And trying to, when we're doing that, hold them accountable. And, if it's, in your case, it was a little bit more of a severe, they needed to have that, but it's also redirecting them towards a more positive activity.
Right. And just kind of the way I approached it was, yes, this was a very negative experience all around for all of us, and nothing that any of us wanted to be in the middle of, but hoping that it could be, yes, this is something that we really wish we didn't have to get to this point, but I said several times, in the future, I would love to see this youth try this again, and I'd be willing to work one-on-one. And that wasn't taken very well in the heat of the moment, but just saying, yes, this was kind of a mess up. Let's be accountable for it and try it again in the future. And we'll see what happens, but just trying to say, just because of this one thing doesn't ruin everything. It's just, this was wrong. Let's move forward and be positive from here.
Yeah, and Sarah made the comment, we also set expectations for our own behavior and actions. And that was one of my other points, is we need to talk and act the way you want these young people to follow and to act. I think that is, we have to remember as youth development professionals that we are the role model as well. And so, we need to really pay attention to our behaviors, to our language, to all of those things. And I know it's tough, and that even is the case when you're off the clock as well, because they still see you in the communities. I know for me, especially when you're in a small community, most of you are in a small community, and you may not see the people in the restaurant that you're in, but boy, they see you, and believe me, they will, if you say something that is not appropriate, it's still, we have to remember that. Any other thoughts on that? On this one?
Carrie, it isn't even just small communities. I mean, it's large communities. I mean, it's that we are, we're trying to say that 4-H youth development is a character building and a safe organization. So we need to ensure that we're doing everything, that we're acting congruent and being a person of character at all times. And then if we're doing that, then our volunteers and our youth see us acting that way, and they say, okay, she walks the talk.
Exactly. Well, so I'm going to give you an example of something that's something that I've seen happen is social media. Our young people think that they can say whatever they want on social media, and well, everybody thinks that they can say whatever they want. Well, we have to remember as youth development professionals, and maybe your personal social media page or your personal social media account, but you know what? It's still, people can still see it. And so we have to be very, very careful about what we say on those. I tell people, I don't get political. I don't talk politics. I don't talk religion. I don't talk anything that I think might be sort of controversial. There's only been like maybe 1 or 2 times that I've made a comment, but I really have, and believe me, it's tough because there's so many times I want to fire back at somebody or just go, oh my gosh, you're driving me crazy. Like, really? But I just have to learn, you as a youth development professional, I know that people see that, not just the people that I am friends with or that I'm connected to on that social media account, but even outside people can't. I mean, there's ways they can see it. It's never gone. And so we have to remember that as professionals, or, how you act, again. I had a coworker, not here, in another job, that very, very bad thing. Her house was broke into, they stole a bunch of stuff, and she got on social media and was dropping the F-bomb about, the people that did this and, blah, 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 blah. And essentially it kind of came back of her supervisor came and said, I know that's your personal account, but people see it. So you need to please watch what you say. So again, that's setting those boundaries and expectations. If we don't want young people to be doing that, then we shouldn't be doing that. All right, constructive use of time. So we look at creative activities, and what they have seen is that our young people should spend at least 3 hours or more per week in something around the arts. So it could be music, theater, or another type of art. And I know that's, so speaking from a parent of a child that has absolutely no musical ability, has no interest in any of that, I do still think it's important that he gets exposed to some of those things. So there's things that he sometimes happens that he's not real pleased about, but I think it's important. Youth programs, they also say that a young person should spend 3 or more hours per week in sports, clubs, or organizations at school or in their community. So again, this is where 4-H plays into, plays into the picture. We are that community non-formal education. And religious communities. So they do say that a young person should spend 1 or more hours per week in activities in some kind of, and I don't know if I would say religious community, but maybe spiritual thought. And again, this isn't one that we control at all, but it's one that they show. And then time at home. So a young person they actually say a young person should spend time out with friends with nothing special to do, 2 or fewer nights per week. So they're saying 2 or less nights per week is when they should be, out with friends, just messing around, I guess is how you would say it. They really need to be spending some time at home with their family. And if you look back at that first one, it talks about, they need to spend time, that family support, etc. So thoughts on that one? Ideas that we can, obviously we can, by providing 4-H activities for our young people, that's one. Other thoughts? One of the things that I've heard suggested and that I think is important is when you do, when you're interacting with young people, ask them about their activities, not just 4-H activities, but what else do they enjoy, and actually that's going to probably give you some ideas of other things that you could maybe implement within the youth within our 4-H program. Is, if you've got 20 kids, as you're talking to young people around your community and you've got 20 kids that are really interested in, say, I know an example, say baseball, and your community doesn't necessarily offer a youth baseball program, then, or maybe it's a very competitive, I know, we see it here where, you have to play baseball year round, but these kids just like playing baseball. They don't want to be, that competitive in it. They just enjoy it. Maybe you implement a 4-H baseball program. We've had 2 communities that have done that. I know Pershing County, I don't know, Josh, if you still have that program. I think I saw that you still do, but Logandale just implemented a youth baseball program as well as a youth basketball program, so that young people in their community would have that opportunity. And so there's ways that we can do that. And I think that is, we find out what the needs are in our area. So that's one thing. And also just find out what kids are interested in. Other thoughts? Okay. So I'm going to move on to internal assets. So as we look at internal assets, these are things that they are getting from within, oh, good, Josh, I'm glad to hear that you still have that baseball program. But so the external things are things that other people can control, and internal ones are that they are gaining control of themselves. So as we think about this, there's 4 areas, 20 assets around these. So we look at commitment to learning. So the commitment to learning is around achievement motivation, so that that a young person is motivated to do well in school. And, this could be, or even just to do well, maybe, and it might not be that they're motivated to do well in school, but maybe they're motivated to do well in 4-H, or you can see that motivation there. And you can see that they are working towards having that. That they're actively engaged in school and in their learning. That they are looking at that. They are doing at least 1 hour of homework every school day. They report that they're doing at least 1 hour of homework every day. And actually it shows, I know a lot of the elementary schools are getting away from homework, but they do show that if a young person does at least a little bit of homework, it does help them, because it makes them follow through with things as well. Bonding to school, that that young person does care about their school. They're not just there, just being, just there, but they actually do care about it. And that they actually show that a young person should read for pleasure 3 or more hours per week. And, so they have that commitment to learning. These are the things that they, to show that they have a commitment to learning. So as youth development professionals, again, what can we do to help strengthen those, or to help our young people build those skills? Because again, they've got to build them from within, and we should, how is it that we could do that, do you think? One example is to attend, maybe that, you can attend a school function. If you know that you've got, a lot of, if the high school's putting on a play, say, and you've got a lot of 4-Hers that are involved in that, maybe you attend that play and make sure, and show the kids that you were, make sure they know you were there, so they can see that you are, that you care about them, and that you are interested in things that they're doing outside of the 4-H program. So that's one or maybe you go to a sporting event that they're all, that they're all participating in. Or you ask them about a book that they've read. Hey, what's a good book you've read lately? Just to see. Other thoughts there?
When I'm able to, recognizing that we have a whole bunch of kids in Washington, when I'm asked to, if I'm invited to a school play or a recital or a musical thing or graduations, I go when I can.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Yeah, I think that's, and yeah, Amanda, we ask them how their classes are going. Is there, is the homework hard? Even just asking them if they're getting their homework done. I've seen that with some of Cody's 4-H volunteers. They're asking him, hey, have you got your homework done? I noticed you're at 4-H tonight. Is homework done for the night? And it just kind of reiterates that importance of learning. I think that is really critical.
And in our after school programs, the ones that we actually facilitate at a site, our team up programs, we come in after homework, but ones that we run the site specifically, we build in homework time before we engage in experiential learning. So,
yep, I think that's important. Yeah. Okay, and we look at positive values. And so when you think about positive values, so caring, they place a high value on helping others. And I think, within our youth program, I think we can help instill that, the importance of helping others. And then equity and social justice, they place a high value on promoting equality and reducing hunger and poverty, but I think it's just, placing that high value on promoting acceptance, I would say, or, and that. Integrity, that they act on their convictions and they stand up for his or her beliefs. Now, I will tell you again, as a parent of a lower end teen, and I've seen this with his friends and with other youth about the same age, this is a very interesting time that I'm seeing, especially in our world today, because we are so polarized almost with our political views. But what I'm appreciating, while I don't necessarily always agree with stances, and sometimes we have to do a timeout and stop and talk about moving back up to that equity and social justice. Sometimes we have to have that conversation. Okay, so let's think about other people's feelings in this manner. But it's very interesting, and it's really cool to see them stand up for those beliefs, and to really feel passionate about that. And so it's, again, as an adult, and I think I would do this even if I saw with other young people in our community. If I see that and I don't feel like they're, that they're doing that kind of caring or that equality, I would bring them back to, okay, let's think about other people's points of views here. I know we have our own points of views, and I think it's great that you are learning how to express those, but let's think about the people around us, and not everybody shares those same viewpoints. And so how can we it's that civil discourse again, having that conversation about having a civil conversation, and disagreeing, but being respectful about that disagreeing. And I think that it comes into that. We also have honesty. They tell the truth, even when it's not easy for them to tell the truth. And I think that's one that, as an adult, we have to be able to do that as well. That they accept and they take personal responsibility. And then you look at that restraint, and they believe it's important not to be sexually active or to use drugs or alcohol. So, I shared a couple of ideas that I had. Can you guys think of other ways as youth development professionals that we can help our young people to build these assets within themselves?
I think it all kind of comes back to practicing what we preach. If we want them to follow these positive things, we need to be showing that to them, and again, holding them accountable when they don't meet those, and just kind of helping them grow into young adults and how to make the right decisions even when it's not easy to do, and kind of staying true to themselves, and how to help them handle getting through things when maybe they don't make the greatest decisions, because that's going to happen. We all do it as adults, so it's okay to mess up, but how do you handle that and turn it into a learning experience and move forward positively? Yep. And just helping them learn all that, seeing it's okay to make mistakes, and just how to handle it positively.
Yeah, that's good. And owning up to our mistakes that we make.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Other thoughts? Anybody else that hasn't talked want to share? I think that one it's a tough one, but I'm having fun with it at home. Some days it's a huge challenge at home, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. And it sounds kind of crazy, but it is. Especially since I have a child that's pretty different from my points of view. And so it's, yeah. Actually, I'm living with two of them that have different points of view than I have. I tried to figure out when I became the very more liberal one in the family. So, but it's okay. It's been fun to see that. And we have to remember when we're talking to young people, we can't bring in our own, sometimes we have to be really careful about bringing in our own viewpoints. And we have to remember it from that youth development perspective of, again, let's think about those around us and how are they going to feel about this. So, okay, social competencies, so that they are, our young people know how to plan ahead and make choices. I think that's a really important thing for any young person to know how to do. That they have interpersonal competence, that they have empathy, sensitivity, and friendship skills. Again, this is something, sometimes we have to stop, take a time out, and talk about, and I've seen it, I see it all the time with young people. They just don't talk to each other the way that they should talk to each other. And so we have to have those conversations. Cultural competence. Young people have knowledge of and are comfortable with people of different cultures, races, or ethnic backgrounds. One of the things, and I haven't seen it, I saw it with the millennial generation. I have not necessarily looked at the research to see if they even have it with the Gen Z generation. But I know they said when the millennials were growing up, they really didn't see race or they didn't see that, because our world has, their world has expanded so much, with their exposure with social media and the internet and everything, that they really don't see, at that time they didn't see the boundaries. I need to look at the research now. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but it would be interesting to know, kind of where this new generation falls with that. But I think that is a really important understanding, and a really good, it's a good skill for anybody to have, is having that knowledge and that comfort with people from different races, cultures, and ethnic backgrounds. And resistance skills, that they can resist negative peer pressure and dangerous situations. Again, I think it's really important that we give them the tools. We're helping them understand the importance of not making those negative decisions. But if they do, let's figure out how to turn that around. And then peaceful conflict resolution. So, how can we solve a conflict using nonviolent methods? And nonviolent methods are not only just, but it can also be a verbal violence. That can be not, but it can be as devastating to somebody if somebody's using like a verbal attack than hitting somebody. So thoughts on that area. What can we do in the area of social competencies?
We just help them. We've got the tools and all of our curricula and all of the positive youth development principles. We just help them pack their toolbox with those values. And again, we model it in everything that we do. And in all of our program areas, we emphasize why that's happening with them.
Yep. I think that's exactly, I think this one especially, I think we need to integrate into our programming that we do, whether it be the interpersonal competence, it could be the planning and decision making. I think we do a pretty good job within 4-H of doing that, but some of these other pieces, I think, just making a conscious effort to somehow try to implement those or integrate those into our programming areas.
This is Nora. I want to focus a little bit on resistance skills. Sometimes when young people do like either political activism or things like that, sometimes adults, criticize them but I remember last year, was it last year when they had at least here they had walkouts regarding gun violence. Mm-hmm. And, of course, people get upset and they're being rebellious, but I think that's a strength. They're showing that they're being politically involved, that they have a stance on something. They feel strong enough to make a statement about it. I don't know if every school here did it, but I know at my nephew's school, what they chose to do was, yes, they kind of let them walk out, but they planned it where it was like the last 10 minutes of the last period. So I feel like that was a good compromise. It was supportive of their views and their resistance skills. Like you don't have to go along with everything that adults do. And sometimes you have to take a stand. So being supportive of that, I think, is important.
I agree with that completely. And as the parent of somebody that was heavily against the walkouts, because I have a child on the complete opposite side of that conversation, it was a great conversation for us to have about, those are their viewpoints. Did I agree with everything that happened with that? No, we had to really, as an adult, I had to think about that. But I think I thought it was very important that the kids get that opportunity to have that voice. And so you have to, giving them those skills. They don't have to go along with what adults say. Yep. Yeah, and Karen shared, using those teachable moments when they do come up, I think is definitely a critical piece. And then it's important to include these types of activities in leadership and club management. I think, the civility stuff that we've been doing, I really think, I would love to get more youth involved in those conversations, because I think that's giving them resistance skills. It's giving them, that interpersonal competence. you know, they may not agree with those viewpoints, but we can figure out how to have those conversations in a polite and civil manner. Okay, other thoughts? I think too, yeah, my kids have strong opinions on that stuff too. Yeah, exactly. You have to let them decide on those political views and let them hear all the sides and make those opinions. And like I said, it's kind of fun to watch, you know. Sometimes I step back as being a parent and I think about it from the youth development professional perspective, and it's really cool to watch. So
Carrie, this is Amanda. I would just add, I imagine everyone on this call knows about emotional intelligence, but there's a lot of great actual tools of experiential learning and practices to help encourage and improve emotional intelligence within youth and as adults as well. How can we continue to grow our emotional intelligence? And, you know, the study is now arguing that can be stronger and more profound for their success in life versus their IQ level.
Yep, exactly. And that's where, you know, these internal assets really do play into effect. So, all right. The other piece that they say with this, especially this kind of area, is breaking it down into manageable steps. You know, don't throw this all at them at once. You have to really, you know, it's a step, you know, it's a process. And so don't think that they're going to know it immediately either. And so, okay, the last one is personal identity. And that's, you know, that personal power and knowing, you know, that the young person feels like they have control over what happens to them. And I think that is something that's, you know, sometimes our young people don't have that feeling, and that's when we start running into issues. So helping them with that. The self-esteem, you know, this is, they report having a high self-esteem. And again, you know, these are things that they build. That sense of purpose, you know, the young person reports that that they feel like their life has a purpose. And the positive, you know, they're optimistic about their future. And I think these, you know, as you look at this, as you look at, Liz kind of said it in the beginning too, you know, you go back to thinking about that, thinking about those external assets and really looking at the support and the empowerment. That's kind of your base. And then as you move up, you know, think about it kind of even as a pyramid or a ladder or whatever, you know, you have to have a strong base, and you get those, you know, those are things that you can be working on with the young people, you know, with our youth at a younger age. I don't think we probably, you know, it'd be pretty tough to, you know, it's easier to, like these assets right here that I see, the internal assets are really, you know, kind of higher level thinking. Does that make sense to everybody? Hopefully. But what can you think about, you know, when you think about this positive identity and our teens, what are ways that we can help our young people to develop these skills or to develop these assets within themselves? One thing that I've seen suggested is discuss how the community or world events can influence your outlook of the future. You know, and then also have that discussion about how to have a positive outlook even when things are bad. You know, especially if you have something happen in your community, what is it, you know, how can you turn that around and have a positive attitude and work towards something positive rather than going down the negative rabbit hole. So, you know, that's one thing. And you have them, ask them about their gifts and their talents. You know, they like to share what they're good at, and that helps them feel like somebody cares about it and gives them, you know, and then you can talk about, you know, you're really good at art, so what do you want to do with that? And give, you know, that's kind of that career development or that workforce development. Have them, you know, find out what their talents are, and then help them think about those as they are, you know, moving forward in their, you know, looking at the future. So, other thoughts or comments about the asset approach? This was a great discussion, you guys. I really appreciate everybody. I do have a lot of, I'm going to be sharing a lot of just handouts with you on this, just so you can have it. And, you know, we can, you can see, you know, these pieces. So we're going to move on. I'm showing about 10:06, and we can get through the other ones. Oops. I want to stop that, and I want to. We're going to move on to the targeting life skills model. And so this one is, okay. You guys are seeing the, whoa, you guys are seeing the life skills model, correct? Yes, the handouts will be in the Dropbox or in the Box account. Yeah. So you guys are seeing the targeting life skills model, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I always have to double check that because sometimes it doesn't happen. So as we think about this, you know, developing life skills is really one of our key goals within youth development, and especially within the 4-H youth development program. You know, we talk a lot about life skills. So, you know, when you think about youth development, it's the process of a mental, physical, social, and emotional growth when, you know, when the young person is developing or preparing to live that, you know, an adult life, being successful. So how do they do that? We know that youth development experiences of high quality don't just happen. We have to plan a high quality program. And so with that, we have to encourage life, you know, we have to think about what are the life skills that we want our young people to learn through this activity or this program. And so, and we need to encourage life skill development when we're delivering subject matter content. And when we need to make sure that we're achieving specific results. And so it really it's becoming more important because we're having to be more accountable for showing program impact. So many of you were on board this fall, and if you were not on board this last fall, but you'll be hearing about it in the next couple of or the next month. But we launched a statewide assessment, I would say, of our youth in the 4-H club program. And we used a tool using some common measures survey tools. Those are evaluation tools that have been vetted, and we ask questions like, is 4-H a place that it's okay to make mistakes? Is 4-H a place to learn about ways to help your community? You know, before you make decisions, do you stop to think about the choices that you have for that? Another question that we asked was, do you set goals for yourself? So we're trying to find out, are they gaining the life skills, you know, and we purposefully picked, you know, there's specific ones that we picked because we know that those are, you know, those are life skills that we want them to learn within the 4-H program in Nevada. And so, you know, we're trying to measure that. And we'll be doing that again this fall. And, you know, we'll be doing it every fall from now on, looking at, you know, over time, you know, our young people, and also looking at where are we lacking, and so we can then help the staff be able to implement that into their, you know, into their programming. So what are life skills? So we know that a skill is a learned ability to do something well, and a life skill is the ability that individuals learn in order to help them be successful in living a productive and satisfying life. So we're trying to give them those life skills so that they can be successful. So within the 4-H program, we use what we call the targeting life skills model. This is not obviously the only model, but this is the one. It was created in Iowa by Pat Hendricks, I think. And it's been around for a long time. It's, it really does feel like it, it really hits where we are looking. Now, granted, you can see there's a lot of life skills on there. We're probably not going to teach all of those at one time, but we can look at different ones. But it divides it based on the 4 H's, the head, heart, hands, and health. And that's probably what makes this the one that we, one of the reasons why we use it. This is actually the model that we use. So you can see within hands, you've got giving. So this is where those, that contribution, that service, being responsible, taking on leadership fall in. The working, so they're gaining marketable skills. They have teamwork. They're learning self-motivation. Within health, they're the being, so this is the self-esteem. They're learning self-responsibility, character. They're learning how to manage feelings, self-discipline. And then living are things like healthy lifestyle choices, stress management, disease prevention, personal safety. And you can go through and see all of these, and I know that there's a lot. And one of the things I want to share with you when we look at this is one of the, I always like to do hands-on activities if I'm teaching this to volunteers. And so one of the activities for this that you can do is you can actually print out this wheel, the life skills model. You take off the actual life skills and you have the volunteers try to put those, you give them a slip of paper with that life skill and you have them go up to the wheel and try to place it in the right place. And the right place on the wheel, and it really does kind of drive home the idea of why they, where they fit within our program. And as we're thinking about programming that we're doing in our communities, maybe you're creating a new program, or maybe you're looking at something and you want to focus. Maybe you want to focus on. So one example could be record books. As we have young people working on record books, you're thinking about that head managing, the head managing aspect of the record book. They're learning resiliency in a way. They're gaining some resiliency skills. They're learning how to keep records. They're learning wide uses of their resources. They're learning how to plan and organize, and they're learning goal setting. So let's think about how we can be intentional about teaching those skills to our young people when dealing with record books. Maybe we have a record book workshop, or offer it 2 or 3 times. But think about, you could pick an area and really focus your programming on that area. Maybe you could focus, maybe during the year, that's, you want to make sure your young people are walking out with good quality skills and abilities in a specific area. So the purpose of it is really to provide a way also to simplify the coordination of these life skills, also within ages and stages tasks. So that we want to make sure our programs are developmentally appropriate and more effective for achieving outcomes. So when you look back at the model, do you think that all of these areas are appropriate for an 8 and a 9-year-old to learn? Probably not. Do you think they're all appropriate for, how about teaching these to a 15 or 16-year-old? Again, some of them may be below, some of them may be above. But, they're all important, obviously. You know, we want our young people to have as many life skills as we can. And you'll notice that these kind of, I mean, you look at them and they kind of correlate with those developmental assets as well. But you look at this, can an 8 and 9-year-old easily master the concept of conflict resolution? That's a little more difficult. That's a more, you know, a difficult concept for an 8 and 9-year-old to grasp. Or I was trying to think of some of the other ones that are, you know, can be a little bit more challenging for them. And so, you know, as a youth development professional, we can start on teaching them conflict resolution skills as an 8 and 9-year-old to move them on the right path to being able to have that skill.
And something I kind of remind my leaders of, or any volunteers, is from my experience in the classroom and my elementary education background, that those 9 and 10-year-olds are very self-oriented in their thinking. So again, like you said, with conflict resolution, they're not thinking, okay, the way I said that might have hurt those person's feelings. It's not really in the whole right and wrong. They may very well be very right and wrong in their thinking, where they said that's right, they said that's wrong. There's no gray area. But once you get to those 15, 16-year-olds, you can kind of say, well, you know, kind of get them thinking circumstantially. And they can start to think of, okay, maybe what I did wasn't completely in the right, but what they did wasn't either. Where can we find a common ground? And just remembering those younger kids, our juniors, are very self-oriented in their thinking and thinking about themselves.
Great, thank you, Liz. That's exactly it. You know, you can start having those conversations with the 8 and 9-year-olds, but they're not going to grasp it.
Nope.
But by the time they're 15 or 16, they're going to remember back, oh, okay, yes, let's think of, you know, yeah, exactly.
Carrie,
Yeah.
this is Nora. I have a question. So as I'm working on developing a new program for middle school students and on life skills, are there some of these that for that age group that the research shows is most important? And are there any evidence-based programs or strategies that you know of that actually impact or show results in those skills?
Yeah, and I know I got your email the other day. I just haven't had a chance to respond to it. You know, I know that they're out there. I have to find it.
It's kind of a long question. I mean, I know it's like you can't just write back one sentence or something. Yeah. So we can talk about it.
Yeah. I know that there are evidence-based programs that help build these skills. I just have to find them because I just can't think of them like off the top of my head, you know, but I know I've seen them. And I'm sure, you know, there are probably some of these skills as you're looking at more of that middle school age group that could be targeted, assuming that they have, you know, that they have some of the other skills. So it's, yeah, definitely we need to be thinking about that.
Okay. You know, there used to be the National Registry of Effective Programs and Practices through the SAMHSA, and it's taken down. So I reached out to people, and for some political reason, no one can exactly answer. But that was years and years of compilation of research that they put that there, and I don't understand why they took that down. But anyways, okay.
Yeah. But we can, yeah, we'll definitely, and just so everybody else knows, that's a program that that they're creating in Clark County to work with the Clark County School District, but it's one we're really hoping to be able to take, you know, statewide to all of our, you know, once we get the program up and going. And so.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, so as we look at the value of this model, we think about, you know, assisting our young people to reach their full potential towards that positive approach, delivering the information and skill practice that's developmentally appropriate for the audience, and then also writing specific learning objectives. And I know that's going to be a session that I'm going to be doing in a I don't remember if I think it's in a couple of months, is actually how to write learning objectives for our activities and our teaching opportunities. And so actually writing learning objectives for that life skill development that are measurable. So I think that's also the key. Yeah, so Liz or Nora, I think you probably just saw Liz's response, and she can look at her books as well. So
Thank you.
yeah, and if anybody has resources, please share them.
Oh, now I put my chat part back up. Now I'll see. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Again, you can complete an instructional plan that creates these experiences. Again, being intentional. We said, positive youth development activities that are high quality do not happen just because they have to be intentional. So we have to be intentional about this life skill development. So, and measuring that life skill development. So again, there is a lot of information. Like, they have a lot of stuff on the Iowa website about the targeting life skills model, because Pat was in Iowa when it was created, and so they really kind of are the holder for that information, I would say, and but I've got quite a bit here too. I just would have to dig through some files at this point. But right, any questions about the life skills model? This is an introduction, and so it's we need to look at it. If you have a chance, take some time and look at it. I know that's, as Nora's asking me some of these questions, I'm like, dang, I haven't had a chance to go out and look at a lot of the current research that's happening lately, because I get so bogged down in a lot of other things. But we have to remember, to sometimes look at what's out there too. So. All right, I'm going to share the experiential learning model with you now, and we have about 6 minutes, and I think I can get through it in 6 minutes. So as we look at experiential learning, and I know a lot of you know about experiential learning and are talking, and have heard about it and are using part of it, but I want to just kind of go into a little bit more detail. So it's really based on John Dewey's work, and it takes place when a person is involved in the activity, they can be involved in the activity, look back, and then evaluate it. They can determine what was useful or important to remember, and then use that information to perform other activities or perform other tasks. So it includes, when you think about the skills that they're learning, and you can apply experiential learning to life skills, to project or content skills, to the science process skills, applied skills, workforce or leadership skills, or service learning skills. You can apply this to any of those. So a program, our 4-H program, our youth program, really does promote the experiential learning model as the primary format. And there's, you'll hear also inquiry-based learning. This is a type of experiential learning. It's got a little bit of different approach, and they use that a lot in the STEM area. And so if anybody's interested in learning about inquiry-based learning, I would be happy to sit down with you, or even connect you with somebody, because I'm not as well versed in experiential learning. I've done quite a bit of it, but probably not as well versed in it as I could be. And then there's several key processing steps that take our youth from simply doing the activity or participating in that experience to actually that learning process. One of the things that I find we do, and I'm guilty of this as well, I talked about we should own up to our mistakes, or own up to our responsibilities. I'm guilty of it too. We plan our activities, we do, but we never do the other pieces of the experiential learning. So what that looks like is, you'll hear it called do, reflect, apply. That's the simple version of it. They do, they reflect, they apply it. And we always, we're so good at the do, but we don't leave time for the reflect. And we might leave some time for the reflect, but then very, very rarely do we get the apply in there. And so the bigger scheme of it is they experience the activity, they share the results, they process the results by looking at the experience and analyzing it, reflecting it. Then they're going to generalize those results, connect that to the experience, to real world examples, and then they're going to apply it. Now, granted, within our program, it's going to be tough for us to get to the apply, because what they're doing is applying that when they're in a similar or different situation. But you can talk to them. I think it's important to talk to them about that. So let's break this down. So the action steps, so the do piece, is the attention is on the learner. And the hardest part about this one is to let our young people really experience the activity without us interfering or stepping in to do it for them. You need, as the adult, and this is true for volunteers or for staff, you need to provide direction and guidelines and guidance, and allow the young person to make a mistake. It's okay in that safe environment. This is where the greatest learning happens, is when they do make those mistakes. So, for us, we need to remember to sit on our hands. We observe. We're facilitating the bigger picture of it. Again, you can see the key objectives for this one is, for them to see that. So then we look at, that got a little wonky. Then we look at the personal and the group reflection steps. So, here we're looking at sharing and processing. This is where you need to ask our young people open-ended questions so that they can discuss and express what happened and why it happened. Allow them to draw their own conclusions to why it happened, and perhaps they need to repeat the experience in order to discover what happened and why. And I think that is really, a really critical piece. And, we sometimes will leave 5 minutes in the end, but we need to remember that we should leave more than 5 minutes at the end for this piece of it. And then the connection and the application step. So with this piece, we're looking at that generalization and that apply. These are two steps that are important conversations to have. This is where our youth can discover what they learned, how they can apply it to other situations, and therefore this is where they start building those life skills. Record books. Record books is a great example. We have them do record books. We might talk to them in a interview judging situation, or we might, talk to them in another situation about, what they learned from the record books, what did they learn? But then we need to have that conversation with them of, okay, so you learned how to keep an inventory of all of your show supplies. So what do you think, what other kind of inventories, or what other kind of, what else do you need to keep a record of? And you have them generalize it using some other examples, and then also, giving them some examples of how they could apply it. So with this, it's the so what. It's our job is to guide them as adults. Our job is to guide them to make those connections. And so again, helping them find new ways to apply it. So this is the, just again, another version of this model. So I want to talk about, in the few minutes that we have, what are some questions? So if you're sharing ideas, you're at step 2 and you're sharing. So here's some examples of questions that you could ask. I'm trying to help, as, if you share this with adults or with volunteers, which feel free to take these PowerPoints and share them with volunteers and share them, with with people that you're working with. But you can ask them, how do you feel? What did you do? What did you notice? What was most difficult? What was the easiest part about what you did? And have them share those ideas. You could, when you're processing that, the what's important. So what are some important things you learned about whatever the topic is? What are problems or issues that occurred over and over, and why do you think this happened? What if you had tried this? What would happen? Or if you could do it again, what would you do differently? That's a question I ask a lot with young people, both when they make a mistake or make a decision that I think is probably not the best decision for them to make. I have that conversation. So we did this time. What do you think you're going to do differently next time? And it gets them thinking about that aspect. So when you look at generalizing, so what? So what did you learn about yourself during this activity? What are some of the major themes or the ideas that relate to other things in your life? So that's where they're starting to identify some of those life skills. Maybe they said, oh, I learned how to plan for disaster, or I learned how to, set goals for my project. So they're starting to think about those life skills. And what did you learn about that life skill while you were doing this activity? So again, these are some processing questions that you can ask. And then the apply. So what are you going to do next time when you run into a similar situation? How can you use this when, that you've learned this skill that you've learned in a similar situation? Or again, what would you do differently next time? And, I always think it's important, because that's probably one of the things that I struggle with sometimes, is what kind of questions to ask. And so, I appreciate the fact that there are some questions that are, that you can have. So, experiential learning takes place when a person is involved in an activity, looks back and evaluates it, determines what is the most useful or important to remember, and uses this information. If you remember when I described what it was in the beginning, so those letters in red are the words that, those are our steps in the experiential learning. One thing to remember is it can thread through many skills in one activity, or it could be a short series of activities. And so we have to think about it in that aspect. And also remembering that focus on learning and leading experientially when working with our 4-H youth. We are the co-leaders in this youth-generated, adult-facilitated service to our future. And so, thinking about that, it's really a youth-generated, adult-facilitated. So the adults should not be involved in the activity. The young people need to be doing that activity, and the adults just need to be there to facilitate that. And I went a little bit over, but thoughts on experiential learning? As you go, as you're kind of moving on this week in what you're doing, I want you to think about how we can take all of these theories or all of these ideas, the ages and stages, the asset approach, the life skills, targeting life skills, and the experiential learning, and how can we use those to help us define what 4-H youth development is in Nevada? And so think about the aha moments. And if anybody wants to, send me any of those aha moments, it would be great to kind of hear those thoughts. I won't make anybody stay on any longer, since I did go a little bit over today, but I kind of wanted to get through these 3 ideas. So we can, but as you kind of process what we've talked about, think about those aha moments, and if you want to share them, send them to me. So if not, then I will let everybody go. I know it's summer and everybody's super busy. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Mary.
Yep.